All right, MYB community, welcome back. Episode number 217 of the Minding Your Business podcast, entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. And boy, is there no business like minding your own when it comes to this election, huh? I guess, yeah, someone said, don't even get me started. So I won't. Subscribe to the podcast, 5-star, 5-star. Helps us connect and grow the MYB community. But yeah, there's a lot of noise going on, right? By a lot of noisemakers, MYB. And remember that you still have someone's going to become the president, right? There's only two candidates. Like it's not American Idol, right? I mean, there's two candidates. One of them's going to win. Okay. So you had a 50-50 chance. All right. So whether your guy wins or not, you still have your goals. Remember those goals you wrote down, those hashtags you post, what you told your buddy that you were going to do or accomplish this year, what you told your spouse, and most importantly, what you told yourself. And we've got less than 60 days left in this year. And so what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? Whoever wins the president, guess what? Your mortgage company is still going to want their money, right? That they're not going to say, well, it was an election, so we'll give you the election season off and then we'll come back, right? Your student loan folks still want their money. Your car note people still want their money. And besides all of that, again, you still want to accomplish your goals. So keep track of the progress. It's important, as are the Senate elections. All of it's important. But don't forget that, two quick things. One, be kind to people, right? With whoever wins. Okay. If your guy doesn't win, it's fine to be disappointed, but doing harm or calling people out of their name and that sort of thing, you can kill all that. You want to bring positive vibes to yourself. Okay. And then the other thing is, you still have your goals, like I said, and don't forget about that, MYB, as you're going through this process. The Twitter mob's going to go berserk. There are loud voices on there, and you can sit there all day and argue with profile pics, right? Or you can go and make something happen. Go do a deal, right? There are people out doing deals right now while everybody's sitting on Google, waiting to see what state reports who's winning, right? Keep that kind of secondary to what you're doing. Speaking of giving, I'm excited about today's guest that's joining us. Jerry is it Kachuriak? Am I saying that right?
Kachuriak, that's right. Yep.
Kachuriak, yeah. I wanted to make sure I say that right. MRB, you know how I am with that. So Tim Kachuriak joins us today. He is the founder and the Chief Innovation and Optimization Officer with NextAfter, which is a fundraising research lab consultancy. And we're going to get into that. He's an author of several books, and we're going to get into some of that too. But I'm excited to have him join from Dallas, Texas, by way of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So he's trying to cover up some of he had his Steelers towel there in the background, and he was trying to cover that up. But I'm a Packers guy, so we're not huge rivals in that sense. But Tim, thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, champ. It's great to be here, buddy.
Yep, absolutely. Let's dive right in, man, for people to learn about yourself and kind of how you got your start. Talk to us about, kind of your upbringing, kind of your story on kind of how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, well, as you and I talked about before the podcast, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so born and raised. I went to college in Pittsburgh. I graduated right after 9/11, which is a horrible time to enter into the job force. Especially for a kid who wanted to break into the field of advertising and marketing. But fortunately, all through high school and college, I worked at a country club, right? And so, I had 432 aunts and uncles that were captains of industry. So wow. The president of the country club was also the president of the second largest ad agency in Pittsburgh. And so I went and met with him and I said, hey, Joe, I would love to come work for your company. So he's like, well, come on down, meet with me. I did my little dog and pony show. And he's like, oh man, I'd love to hire you. And then he started to wring his hands. He's like, but you know what? 9/11 hit our industry harder, hit our agency harder. We just laid off 30 people yesterday. Sorry, I can't help you. Right.
Wow.
So 6 months out of college, I'm like wandering in the wilderness, trying to find somebody to give me a shot. I ended up meeting a serial entrepreneur. He owned a bunch of little companies. We met at a golf outing. And he's like, well, maybe you could do a couple little projects for some of my little businesses. I was like, well, I don't know sure, might as well. And so did a couple projects. He's like, well, why don't you start your own business? I was like, well, I don't know how to do that. He's like, well, I do. He's like, we've got an incubator on the second floor of our office building. I'll give you a desk. I'll introduce you to people. I'll be your partner, and the rest is up to you, kid. So I'm like, well, shoot, I'm living in my parents' basement, right? I've got no overhead, no romantic interests, nothing going on, So So that was my first experience, honestly. Just coming out of school, I started this business called Ambience Interactive, which ended up becoming like an active marketing company. So this is back like 2002 to about 2007. And during that time, a lot of the general market ad agencies didn't have in-house digital folks. And so we became like a little digital boutique. They'd outsource it to us. And so I did that for 5 years, and it was great.
Wow. And so, so you and I are close around the same age, because I graduated college in 2003, which was right around the time President Bush was kind of full-fledged in his quote unquote war on terror.
Right.
I had my own war on terror.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you did too. And so, with that early business, I guess how did you work kind of building the relationships in that early time? I mean, obviously someone gave you a shot opportunity and you took full advantage of it, but, walk me through kind of those early days, those first few, clients that you worked with, and, were there ups and downs with it, or?
I mean, you got to think back to like when you're first coming out of college, right? So like incredibly insecure, incredibly green. I have no like idea like what the expectations are. And so out of insecurity, I just kind of like overshot the moon, right? So like in terms of like client service, we like over delivered, under promised. And, we started to develop a reputation for just, being a nice little shop that got stuff done. But what was so great about like owning a business before I went to work anywhere else is, I felt like I got a PhD in business, right? So, when you own a business, you get the customers, you got to keep them happy. Eventually you got to get a staff. You have to make payroll every week. I mean, it's like, there's all these things that you have to, figure out how to do. And I've always been the kind of person that like learns by doing. So that was like probably the absolute best start I could have had.
Sure.
So I did that for like about 5 years. And, I loved what I was doing, but I wasn't really excited about, the companies that we're working with. Not that they were bad, but like, because we were linked to like these general market ad agencies, we had whoever clients they had. So we had a lot of like clients and automotive clients. Nothing wrong with car dealers or lawyers, but it really spin my wheels. You know what I mean? So about 5 years into it, my church was doing a capital campaign to build a new building. And I was like, well, I'll volunteer our agency to do all the marketing materials for that. And it was the first time that I was doing something I felt like I was wired to do, like digital marketing, but a cause I cared deeply about.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like a turning point. And I was like, man, I really like the way this feels, like, I feel like, if I do my job well, I'm kind of, doing something that kind of not just earns me a paycheck, but aligns with a passion of mine. Right. Sure. So that kind of led to a little bit of a crisis of career. I was like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this business anymore. So right around that time, my friend had made a pretty bold move. So he was a financial planner. He shut down his practice and he went and accepted the job as executive vice president for a nonprofit in South Florida. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. So I called him up and I'm like, hey, what's going on down there? He's like, you should come check it out. And so I had I left, it was like November or December or something. There's like 6 inches of snow on the ground in Pittsburgh. I get to Fort Lauderdale, the ambient temperature like 81 degrees. My interview is at this place, Aruba Beach Cafe, right on A1A, right on the sand. Like the sliding glass doors are open. The sea breeze is blowing through my hair. The waves are crashing out of the door. They're like bling, 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 bling,
right.
bling, And I was like, this looks pretty good, right? So I fly back home. I told my wife, I was like, honey, I think we should do this. So in a matter of like 2 months, we sold our business, we sold our house. My wife we had a 16-month-old and she was 8 months pregnant with our second. We moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida to go to work for this nonprofit organization.
Wow.
That was how I kind of got into the nonprofit space. And, as life is, like there was another kind of twist. So as soon as I got there, the 35-year leader, he'd been there for 35 years. He was the leader of this organization. He had a heart attack and he passed away. And we went from like a 36 $1 million a year organization to 18 in 12 months. Right. So like basically cut it.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was like, well, what am I going to do now? Right. And so I was hired to do all the digital communications for this organization, but they said, whatever you're doing online, you need to figure out how that stuff makes money. So like, that's how I kind of got into like the world of fundraising. And through that, I discovered that there's basically like advertising agencies that work exclusively with nonprofits. And we worked with one that was based out of Dallas, and they had been doing direct mail for 30 years. They said, look, we're trying to figure out how to go into this digital space. Would you consider coming to Dallas and starting a digital fundraising division for our agency? I was like, I've got no prospects here. You know what I mean? Like everything is in a death spiral. So moved to Dallas in 2008 and went to work for a company called KMA Direct Communications. And that was, you know, the kind of like the next step of the journey for me.
Yeah, excellent. And so Tim, you get to Dallas, and now you're heading up, you know, this new division within your firm. And so, you know, walk us through kind of that piece of the process. I mean, obviously, you've got this entrepreneur mind. I think one of the things that really is helping you in this, what it sounds like, is you've got this entrepreneur vision, right? And you know, your teams, for lack of a better sense, they know this, and so, you know, you going and moving to a new market to help, you know, kind of launch a new division really kind of fits your wheelhouse, is what it sounds like. And so, you know, talk about, so you get to Dallas, right? And, you know, at this time, you know, your wife's had the baby, I imagine, at this point, and, you know.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot to mention, she was also 8 months pregnant with our third when we moved to Dallas. So like, it seems like every time we make a move, like, you know, or every time she's pregnant, I call Will and I'm like, hey, honey, I think it's time to sell the house because, you know,
right.
you're pregnant.
She's probably, she doesn't want to get pregnant anymore because you're going to come wanting to move.
Well, we had one more. We did move in the process, but this time across the country, across the county. So it wasn't that big of a deal, right?
Right.
Not that big of a deal.
There you go.
So, yeah. So I come to Dallas, and, you know, I'm kind of like now an entrepreneur, right? So I'm hired to start this digital fundraising division. And right when they hired me, they hired a bunch of executives at the same time. And like, we were all stepping all over each other. And it was just like, it was messy.
Yeah.
And I thought that I would, like, you know, get to Dallas, love the job and hate Dallas, end up like loving Dallas and hating the job. So 6 months into this thing, I was like, man, this is not working. You know, I'm just going to go and start my own consulting deal. I went back and talked to a couple old clients. They're like, yeah, we totally come on. I was very open with the leadership of the company that I worked at. I said, look, I don't think that this is the right fit. They said, look, we get it. Yeah. We'll give you a soft landing. So we'll contract back with you for a period of time, give you kind of a ramp. And I was like, you know, I was kind of set. I was going to go start this company. Actually, I set up NextAfter LLC in 2009.
Yeah.
And everybody I talked to in my life, they were encouraging me. They're like, totally, this is you. This is definitely the next step for you. And then I had a conversation with my brother. And my brother and I were not super close. I mean, we're brothers. So, we've always, had that relationship, but, just very different interests. But I was having this conversation with him, and I was telling him about my plans. And he's like, hey, man, that sounds cool, but can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are you ever really, like, content? It just seems like you're always, like, looking for the bigger, better deal for Tim.
Yeah.
And that was like a total gut shot for me, because he was absolutely right. Right. So, like, when we lived in South Florida working for a nonprofit, we couldn't get into the housing market, but we moved to Dallas, and, like, we bought a house. It was the nicest house I ever lived in, but our house wasn't nice enough. Right. Yeah. The kind of cars we drove weren't nice enough. So of course my job wasn't right. You know what I mean? So it was really an issue with Tim. It wasn't an issue with anything else. And I remember thinking, like, I can go and chase this for the rest of my life and try to fill kind of like void and just constantly, just be, uncontent and miserable. Right.
Yeah.
I can say, look, even though things don't feel good right now, I'm going to suck it up and I'm just going to stick it out and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So I went back to the leadership of KMA, hat in hand. I said, look, guys, I've had a change of heart. If you'll have me, I'd like to stay on board and I'd like to try to make this work.
Yeah.
That was like another turning point, because it was like, after that, like, I had so many incredible opportunities with some huge organizations, and we were able to, like, build the largest division of the company. This digital division just became like the rising star. I would have missed all of that, champ, if I would have threw in the towel. So that was like such a great thing. And also that was an opportunity for me to build my personal brand at that company. I had the opportunity to go speak at a lot of conferences. I became known as like this digital fundraising guru. And so that let me, when I did eventually leave to go start NextAfter, which was much later, I came in at a much higher level. So that's maybe a lesson just for like any sort of entrepreneur or intrapreneur is like, sometimes things suck and you just got to go stick it out, right? You got to just like commit to something. You can't just keep hopping from thing to thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of that squirrel mentality, and not to say that you had that, but sometimes that happens in entrepreneurship, right? Again, something runs by and you yell squirrel, and everybody goes and looks, and sometimes, and I'm guilty of that too. At times, Tim, I tend to, there was a time where I always wanted to have the next biggest, brightest, kind of shiniest thing, and nothing was ever good enough. And I would get bored with things kind of, quickly and kind of want that new thing. And you're exactly right. So a lot of that you have to look intrinsically at yourself and see, what lies in that. But you're right. Some things you just got to kind of stick to the script, a little bit and kind of stick to your plan. And it's easy. A lot of times for, like you say, solopreneurs and, that sort of thing, it's easy to, have that desire to always want to jump on, whatever you see or hear that's the hottest thing or whatnot. And sometimes, again, you just have to ride it out, for someone like me, like getting started, when I got started in real estate, it's always tends to be a hot thing, but it can be slow at times. And it's certainly slow when you're first starting, because like you say, you got to build the relationships, you got to, and like with a lot of things, you got to take your lumps. I mean, that's part of getting to success. And, you got to take that, punch in the gut or a few punches in the gut sometimes to get there. So I definitely feel you on that. I think that's a great lesson that you share of great value with the community listening to this is, sometimes you just got to ride it out and you got to commit.
That's right. It's the Rocky Balboa wisdom, right? So it's like life is all rainbows. It's a mean and nasty place. It'll beat you to the ground and hold you there if you let it, but it's not how hard you can hit. It's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. Like things like that just I think define character and help build your leadership potential someday when you're able to go through stuff like that. So
yeah, absolutely. And so with NextAfter, so tell me about how that got started. Did you start that kind of incubated by yourself? Did you have partners, or kind of walk us through and unpack that?
Yeah. So during my time at KMA, and then we got acquired by another agency called the Pursuant Group. So between those two different places, I just became obsessed with trying to figure out how do we optimize the online donor funnel. So everyone, is familiar with the concept of like the sales funnel. There's different ways you can kind of get people to your website. You're trying to move them from like interest to involvement to investment. And the same is true with online fundraising. And when I looked around at the space, I didn't see a lot of like rigorous science, like all the things that I had learned in the for-profit space, like conversion rate optimization and decision science and behavioral economics. Nobody was talking about that in the nonprofit space.
Right.
So I would go to these like for-profit marketing conferences and try to kind of adapt the things I was learning and bring it over to the nonprofit space. And I'll never forget, I was at this one conference and they were talking about like, testing and experimentation and how like the web is kind of like the world's greatest behavioral laboratory, because you can test everything and monitor the data in real time and optimize your website or optimize, your transaction engine or whatever based off of behavioral data. So I was working with a nonprofit at the time. We had just won this contract, and it was a $300 million capital campaign to build the George Bush Presidential Library. So you mentioned George Bush, but we built this library at SMU campus in Dallas.
Yeah.
So we were doing all the fundraising for that. And I remember at the conference, I was like, I called my team. I said, guys, get ready, because when I get back on Monday, we're going to change the way we do everything. I said, forget Monday. Let's test this stuff out right now. We were sending an email to a rented list of about 200,000 people. And the purpose of the email was to try to get new donors for the center that was being built. And I said, give me like an hour and I'm going to come back with a new treatment that we can test. So, we have our existing email that we've been sending over and over again, and it had been working really well. Yeah. And I said, I'm going to come up with a new one and we'll do an A/B split test and we'll see if this stuff works. And, I kind of chickened out. I only made one little tiny change to the email. It was to the very last sentence of the email. Now, if you read best practices, you know that only 18% of people reads at the end of an email. So how can making one little change to that area make a significant difference? But nonetheless, we ran the test. 100,000 people got the original version. 100,000 people got the new treatment, and that one change produced 139% increase in click-through, a 42% increase in revenue.
Wow.
And at that moment, I was hooked. I was like, this is it. I want to spend the rest of my life optimizing fundraising. This feels so good, because as a consultant, everybody looks at you like you have all the answers, and deep down inside, I know I don't, right? But I discovered a way where I can actually go figure out the answers. And it's by testing and allowing the data to be the decision maker. And that was just kind of like a light bulb moment for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Tim, as working with nonprofits, and I appreciate, kind of that comparison of, on the corporate side, when you learn about conversion rates and running things through the sales funnel, right? I'm curious as to how, your business kind of, helps coach nonprofits and then donors and educate donors as well. What I found as someone that's a former banker, right, who worked with nonprofits, is that oftentimes I found that they would have this belief that people give to their organization, or people give to their website, right? So everything is that they promote it as the instructions, right? The call to action, which is the corporate side, right? Hey, go to the website and give $25 because, and it's almost like they make that the forefront, as opposed to really, I always used to think, to me, it's like, well, thinking as someone that would be a donor, and of course we all have, right? What connects me to your mission, or to what, like, where's the connection, right? How do you help, those organizations kind of realize that? Because I think that helps, really progress fundraising, is when nonprofits can understand as quickly as possible that, people don't just give to websites or just to, empty, because I do a campaign in December to try to say, oh, let's catch all the people before December 31st because their taxes are blah, blah, blah. That's kind of a simple type move. But, talk about how you work to help them connect on their mindset towards fundraising.
Oh, so you're touching on, like, out of 8 years of research, like it's so simplistic, but it's also so profound. Out of all of our testing, out of all of our research, the number one thing that we continue to find over and over again is that people don't give to websites. People don't give to direct mail campaigns. They don't give to emails. They don't even give to organizations. People give to people.
Yes.
And so what we find is, like, fundraising is all about relationships. And so what we try to do is try to humanize the connection. I mean, like, anytime you have any sort of mass communication, whether that be like radio, TV, internet, like mail, like, you're distancing yourself from the other human, right?
Yeah.
And so what we do is try to humanize the conversation that's represented by whatever medium you use to be able to form a lasting and bonding relationship. That's the only way that fundraising really, really works. And it's the way that you retain a donor for the lifetime. Just like we're trying to retain a customer, we're trying to retain a donor. And you can't do that if you're just throwing tactics at them or throwing calls to action at them, or just constantly trying to game the system with, like, cheap little psychological tricks. It doesn't work over time, right?
No.
So give to people. That's the main thing. And the way that we kind of bring organizations along is by running experiments that show that within the data. We give them, like, I'll give you a simple example.
Yeah.
If you look at most nonprofit fundraising emails that they send, they're highly designed. They've got HTML, lots of graphics and images and all kinds of things. Well, when you see that in your inbox, what do you think? That's somebody trying to market to me, right? I don't want to be marketed. I want to be communicated with. So one simple thing that we've tested, we've done it with dozens of organizations. We've done it in different countries. We've done it in different languages. Getting rid of all of that junk, get rid of the images, get rid of the HTML, get rid of the buttons, and actually rewrite the message, a plain text message that sounds like it's coming from one human to another human. 200, 300% increase in donation conversion when we do stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And that's a simple process, right? And if you think, like, using all the email template stuff, and you can get so bogged down into trying to automate the process so much that, you become so cookie cutter that, here's just another HTML email. How they get my email, and, all this type, so people get crummy towards it, as opposed to, okay, I'm actually talking human to human. Now share with me the need, right? Where is the need, and how can I help the need? If we work together, versus, like you say, this is just, from their mindset, okay, you just hired some kid to sit in a windowless room and, fire off things from MailChimp, and you just happen to have my email, or you bought it from some database or something. Like you say, there's no connection. And one of the things, and we'll get into this here in just a second, Tim, is, especially during this pandemic, that I think the companies that are able to, kind of touch the soul and kind of have that human to human contact, even as Zoom, who was positioned very well for this time, and you talk about a company being in the right place at the right time, and like you say, everything has become the barrier of a screen, right? How to still have that human connection, I think it's been critical for a lot of the businesses that have thrived, or at least been able to survive and weather the storm through the pandemic.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think one of the problems for all of us when we like put on our marketing hat or our fundraising hat is that we just we don't have a high enough view of our customer. We just think that they're just gullible, silly, targets that we can just go blast at, and they'll just do the things we want, right? And so
right,
what we're finding now is that especially doesn't work. But also now I'm taking away all of a lot of your other channels, for example, like in fundraising. Face-to-face fundraising is a huge component. Like people that go and get on airplanes and go meet with the donors, and they have a one-to-one conversation, and they ask them for a big dollar amount. I mean, that's been taken away. Events, right? So getting people together and doing these galas and these auctions and things like that, that's gone, right? Yeah. So now you're left with okay, I can still send emails, but email is really cheap. It doesn't cost me anything. It's very easy to do. So people, they overdo it. They send too much, and they don't put enough time and energy and thought in trying to craft a compelling, message from one human to another human. And so that's what we really work through with some of our training and some of the things that we do with nonprofits, is trying to kind of just get them to slow down before they speed up, right? Get them to start to think more and plan more, and embrace every single touch point as if it is the only opportunity that they have.
Yeah, absolutely. With the customers that you're working with today, Tim, kind of compare and contrast, has anything changed from, kind of pre-pandemic to now currently during the pandemic? And when I say change, I guess I'm asking or digging into, that mindset, right? Has the mindset been able to progress? Maybe some are or understanding the points that you and I are making more organically, or are you still having to do a lot of coaching and development as, now we're, 7, 8, going on 9 months into the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah. So on March 15th, I looked at our chief technology officer. I said, Kevin, we do a lot of these mystery donor studies. And basically what that means is we'll go out, subscribe to hundreds of organizations, monitor everything they send us, and then we give mystery donations to these organizations, and then continue to monitor how they communicate with us. Yeah. So because we've done this for a number of years, we have this aggregate donor inbox. So think it's like a giant Gmail account, and thousands of nonprofits are pouring their emails in on a regular, daily basis.
So that's almost like a like getting firsthand data. I mean, so you're getting like primary data. Wow,
that's right. It's market intel. It gives us an opportunity to really experience what donors are experiencing on the other side of the screen. Yeah. So I went to our CTO and I said, hey, we've got all this interesting data. What if we created a series of different visualizations that are going to answer some of the questions that people are asking us every day? Number one, are people still emailing their donors? What are they saying in their communications? What's the mix of newsletter versus fundraising ask versus cultivation kind of content? Are they mentioning coronavirus or COVID-19 or pandemic in the communication? So we went with all these questions. We looked at the data. We created this coronavirus resource center where we've been tracking since March 15th all the way through current day, all of the communications. And here's what we're finding. Email volume is up significantly year over year. So because I've taken away some of their other channels, because I can't get on airplanes, I can't have events, this is their lifeline. Digital is the lifeline. Yeah. But what's also cool is we've been tracking what are donors doing. So we have, for about 100 organizations, we have their Google Analytic data, which has all the transaction data. And what we find is that year over year, online giving is actually up 30% compared to 2019. So what's happening is nonprofits are leveraging digital more, and donors are responding more in that channel. So it's kind of like, it's been good for our business, honestly.
Yeah, of course, definitely. Do you see that continuing? And again, kind of like you and I were saying earlier, Tim, coaching the nonprofit, how do you, if a nonprofit's experiencing maybe an increase in donations as a method of, more people connecting with them digitally, I kind of see some parallels with what I see in the community banking industry, where a lot of the PPP, the payroll protection lending has been done. That's not what they expected to do coming into this year, right? Because nobody expected to have, this pandemic and the SBA to have all this extra government money flying around. And so when I talk to a lot of those bankers, I'd love to get your opinion and kind of thoughts on this, because I think it connects. One of their major concerns is how do they connect with these new customers, right? Who only have they have one product with them, right? They got this loan. And so how do, the big opportunity for them, and really the future survival of their bank, is how do I retain these folks, and how do I get them using more of my services, so that I become their kind of, when someone asks them who they bank with, they say my bank, right? Yeah. I wonder, is that the same in the nonprofit space, where, as the pandemic goes on and it subsides, Tim, those nonprofits that do a great job of, again, connecting with the people and kind of bringing them in almost like as family members, as opposed to, the MailChimp that I can't respond to, and it's just, gimme, 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 gimme.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. That's it. So it's like, customer service is everything. So this is true as it relates to, like, onboarding a new donor, right? So if somebody gives me a gift for the first time and they're responding to maybe some sort of like coronavirus relief program that I'm doing, right? So it's like the first time that they've ever experienced my organization, and then I just pummel them with ask after ask after ask after ask.
Right.
Do you think I'm ever going to go back to, or pay attention to these guys? No, I'm going to opt out. I'm going to go and, like, delete them from my email accounts, and they're never going to hear from me again.
Right.
But a person they kind of like connect me and say, look, thank you so much for the gift that you gave. Let me show you what the impact is of that. Let me kind of connect you to, like, how you've been able to make a difference in somebody else's life. That makes me feel great. Right.
Yeah. And
so, I totally relate to the banking thing, because, we banked with a very large, bank for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And when we applied for our PPP loan, we didn't hear anything back. And, like, so we went to a small community bank that said, oh no, we can do that for you. They did. Their customer service has been amazing. And then they've kind of like won us over. So now we're in the position where we're saying, maybe we just need to move everything over to these guys, because, they treat us so much better. Right. Like I had never just, when you start a business, you're just like, I don't know, I'll go pick, the Wells,
whatever
or the
bank.
Chase,
Yeah.
Right. And so you pick one of the big ones because it's convenient, because they've got a branch right around the corner from your office.
Yeah.
But then you don't realize that, like, you're not going to get the kind of high touch that you can get from some of these, smaller, more type of, community banks. So, I mean, I totally, and I think that you're right. It's a huge opportunity for them. It's a huge opportunity for, for our nonprofits as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely agree with you there. Let's talk a little bit about your books. So you authored the book, Optimize Your Fundraising. And then you were the lead researcher and the co-author of Online Fundraising Scorecard, Why Should I Give to You? Let's talk about those. Let's start with Optimize Your Fundraising. Talk to us about the book. Where can we find it? What kind of inspired you to write it? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So Optimize Your Fundraising. I mean, it's kind of like our thesis. Like, that's ultimately what we do. So I was like, well, somebody's going to have to write that book, and it might as well be me. So really, it just kind of takes people on the journey of beginning to see that, adequacy is the enemy of excellence. Like good is the enemy of great. And if you just like kind of like settle into saying, oh, well, we're satisfied with just growing incrementally year after year, you'll never really achieve greatness. So like, that's really what optimization is to me. It's this idea that no matter how good I think I'm doing, I know I can get better. So that comes, I guess, a little bit from that like lack of contentment that I talked about, but I've kind of channeled it into a good direction as opposed to like, a soul eating direction as it was before. So that's kind of what that book is about. And then the other, why should I give to you? That was actually really just a research study that was focused. It came out of a simple mystery donor study that we did. Basically, we went to 127 organizations and we asked them through 4 different channels. We called them on the phone. We sent them an email. We went to their website, see what that had to say. We messaged them on social media. We just asked one simple question. We said, look, I'm considering giving a gift to you. Can you tell me why should I give a gift to you rather than some other organization or not at all? Yeah. And the reason why we ask that question is because how people answer that determines what their value proposition is, right? Yeah. And very interesting is that like with forked tongue, they say different things in different channels. In some cases, they completely ignored us and didn't say anything. So like, that's what that one was kind of really, all about, is trying to explore that question a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. No, tremendous stuff. And I imagine we could find both books on Amazon and, some of the different channels. Yeah, absolutely. So MYB, look for the links in the show notes. You'll be able to click and go ahead and support Tim on that by purchasing one or both of those books. Make great gifts as we're approaching the holiday season. Great. So the great gift, the stuff into a stocking or wrap and stick under the tree. So I guess, Tim, what do you see next for your organization? And I know it's hard to project, and kind of see the future with everything being as cloudy as it is, right now today as we're talking. But, if you were to project out, where do you see kind of the direction of your organization and, how it supports, your customers today and then, your future customers?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that question because we just last week had a senior leadership team offsite strategic planning meeting. And this was exactly the question that I gave to my team. I said, look back the last 5 years, trace like where you were both personally and professionally over the last 5 years. Now look forward 5 years and, tell me where you think we're going to be. And, the vision that kind of came from that exercise is really, I think pretty exciting. Like, so what we see is like in 5 years, we'll be known as like the leader in digital fundraising globally. So we just launched this brand new research study. It's the Global Online Fundraising Scorecard study. It's in 9 different countries, 4 different languages, 600 organizations are participating. And that's giving us access to like all these different, areas that we've never really kind of explored before. We've recently partnered with the Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy in the UK and appointed a NextAfter research fellow who's really their job is to kind of adapt like some of the evolving science of philanthropic psychology to digital fundraising. So like more on the research side of things. And then we've published 2,500 experiments in our fundraising research library. And we think that in 5 years, we'll have published our 10,000th experiment. Wow. So for us, it's about like, doing more of the things that we're doing today, delivering exceptional, client results for our clients, doing more original research studies, doing more testing and experimentation, and then socializing our learnings as far and wide as we possibly can so that we can ultimately reach our vision, which is unleashing the most generous generation in the history of the world. So that's where we're going, man. And it'll be fun. Maybe you'll have a go for episode 2642. And
yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you picked that specific one too.
I caught it.
Yeah, there you go. So you got first dibs on that episode. But so that's awesome. What are your thoughts on, not I guess the specific companies, but the piece of online donating that's become polarized, right? The GoFundMe, type is what I refer to it, where it's almost like the personal individual kind of crowdfunding. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you kind of manage that as a lane kind of somewhat in your space. Maybe not necessarily used by a lot of the the more vetted level of nonprofit, but obviously you got a lot of smaller nonprofits that may use a service like that. What's kind of your thoughts there, or maybe some of the others that you may not say compete with, but they're out there. They're out there, I guess, in the midst for donors, right?
For sure. No, I think they're interesting. I mean, really, what the GoFundMe's and other kind of platforms like that is leading to is the democratization of fundraising and philanthropy, right? So, like, the way that the system kind of has been set up and has been running, traditionally, is that there's these organizations, and you have to give your money to the organization so that then they can go do, the work of helping these individual people. But now it's like power to the people, which is kind of cool. Honestly, it's really interesting. Now, our clients don't like it because, now it's a new, quote unquote competitor that they have to be able to, try to, I guess, compete with. But I mean, I think it's interesting. So, we're developing different kinds of experiments with crowdfunding platforms to try to say, like, how do you optimize that? Like, if that's something that's going to be here and probably continue to be part of the fabric of at least online giving, like, how do we, optimize that as best we possibly can?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. No, it's a good thought and good thing to kind of explore from in this conversation. For you personally, obviously you've gone through the changes, man. You've rocked and rolled those. Tremendous family, things like that. What's kind of next for you, Tim? For you on a more personal note, when you kind of project out and see how you're leading that organization, leading your family, what's next for Tim?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. So, like, I was always taught that, like, a leader is supposed to constantly, like, work themselves out of a job, right? So, like, when you're like the single shingle, you're the only person, you do everything. You go get the customers, you go service them, you do the accounting, you do the bills, everything, like, lives and dies based on whether or not you can go make it happen.
Sure.
But then you start to add staff, right? And then you have to start to divest yourself of some of these things, right?
Exactly.
I've been so blessed that I have such incredible team, and, like, everybody that we've hired is better at me than everything. And so I'm just like, well, what am I supposed to do now? Right.
Right.
So I'm kind of going through that now. I read this really great book, Patrick Lencioni. It's called The Motive. And it's really kind of gets to the heart of, like, what's driving you as the leader of your organization? Are you motivated to just kind of, like, try to, say, look, I've arrived, I'm the CEO. And so, now I'm just going to go do the things I want to do. Or are you going to go, get in the dirt and go and do the things that really nobody else can do or should do, but has to be done by the leader of the organization? So that's where I'm at personally. It's kind of been a little bit of a challenging place because, I never gave myself the title CEO because I just never felt like I was, worthy of that job. And so I'm kind of interviewing for that role within my own company.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep. Excellent. And so as you fulfill that role, that's interesting because you're kind of somewhat serving as that role, so to speak. And so as you bring on someone at that talent level, kind of then what? Are you going to work with this individual to kind of help continue to progress the company? And, are you looking to kind of expand and go into different markets, or are you looking to kind of central hub there in Dallas and just kind of, work with organizations, that you want to work with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if we're able to continue to, like, fire on all cylinders with our 4 strategic pillars, right? What we think is that it will open up the opportunity for us to own and operate vertically integrated business units, right? So, like, we're going to keep NextAfter what NextAfter is, which is digital fundraising, go deep and wide as we possibly can there. But because we have this, like, this big, like, demand generation machine that we've built through our content marketing, because we have this, like, research lab that's constantly exploring and discovering new things, we think that we can either acquire or, be able to spin up, like, these different vertically integrated businesses, whether that be a direct mail company that does direct mail the NextAfter way, or whether that be like a CRM system or some sort of online technology company. So I see that as kind of like the future. I'm a starter. I'm really good at that part of it.
Yeah.
Once it gets to this point, it's kind of like, you get the team in place, and like now we need to kind of figure out where the next mountain to climb is. So that's where I kind of see things going for me.
Yep, that's awesome. Yep, I love that. And so, in that same spirit, Tim, for someone that's listening to this podcast, and I always think about, what can they take away with them, when they get done listening? What are some, one or two best practices that, really have worked for you and worked for your company, that you think someone that's listening, because, people listening, to this podcast span the gambit, right? There's some that have ideas and they're still working, and they dream of having their own business for whatever reasons those are. There's some that, have their moonlighting or have side hustles, right? And so that may be their goal, is to kind of have their job and have a side hustle. They may eventually want their side hustle to replace their job. And so, people kind of run that gambit, and, they're always looking for, what's the, what's the edge? What's something that can really help me, that I can take away? So, what would be that, that you would share with this audience?
Yeah, I would say, if you're working at a company right now, think of how you can, inside of your role, build your personal brand. Like, so for me, that's what really enabled me to launch and start my own company, is that, I would volunteer to go to all these conferences, and I would go network with people, and then I would, get invited to go speak at conferences. And, so like it gave me a great opportunity to like build a personal brand, so that when I did start, NextAfter, I had a network of people that I could go to for potential business. The second thing I would say is, just stick with it. The hardest thing is, sometimes grinding, right? When it seems like, you're not really making much progress, especially in some of like early days. And so, I can't really name too many people that are super, super successful that just like hop from thing to thing to thing to thing. Like the people that I know that are very successful, they stick with something for a long period of time. So there's some sort of, value in that staying power. And then the final thing, it's on my t-shirt. It's one of our core values in NextAfter. It's err on the side of generosity. I have never had generosity come and bite me in the butt. Right. So, we say, how do we actually integrate that through every aspect of our company? We do pay for all of their insurance. We provide lunch every day to every single employee that's in the office. We also are generous, like in terms of like sharing all of our knowledge. So like we've taken every single one of our experiments that we've developed, and we actually open source it. We put it online. So that means all of our competitors have it. Everybody else in the market has it. They could go take it and go do it themselves. And everyone's like, well, aren't you giving away your best stuff? And the answer to that question is, well, maybe, right? But what that does is, if you give away your best thing today, it puts positive pressure on you and your organization to come up with something better tomorrow, right? So it kind of creates this cycle of innovation and optimization. So, just try to figure out ways to be generous and have open hands, and it will not backfire.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, Tim, that, that spirit of generosity, being able to kind of stick with one thing, at a time, and, that sort of thing. I mean, again, those are tremendous best practices. And, just, being able to personally brand yourself. I know for me, as you were saying that resonated with me, because, I was the type that I would volunteer for things, early in my banking walk, when, one of the things that I learned pretty quickly that I could use to give myself a little bit of an edge was I had youth on my side, right? Which means, I probably had a good share of ignorance and that sort of thing as well to match it. But there were these older bankers, right? Like when a merger would happen, when two banks would merge together, and they'd be like, oh, crap. Ron, I've been through 10 of these, and you guys, they were all crabby about it. They're ready to retire and all that type of thing. I'm going to get out of here. I just, I've seen these go bad. They're going to bring in some person, somebody young like you, and then they're going to pay them, And so I took more of the attitude, like, hey, bring it on, right? And so I would go to leadership, and I was like, listen, if you need somebody to, I know the systems very well. If you need somebody to, help them get up to speed, I'm your guy. Just let me know. So what they did was, when they would have mergers, is, they paid me and paid my expenses to go to different markets and just, with a manual, and just train people on how to, the incoming bank, just train them on how to use it just in their branch network. Right. And so that helped me make a name kind of through the organization, because, that word would get back to, because people were talking, right?
Sure.
Oh, we had Ron here, he was helpful, he's great. Yeah. So then that word just starts traveling back to my market. And then it eventually got to like the corporate hub. So, I got a phone call, from the CEO of the bank, and, he wanted to know kind of like, he's like, I'm at a high level, but, I don't get to see things from your level. Right. So, we end up having a conference call at that time. It was way before Zoom and all this stuff. That we just had a conference call, and I just went through kind of like, not the, I'm not the mole, but I'm just saying, this is kind of, where, from my opinion, where we had advantages and then where we had gaps. And something else that I learned through that process, Tim, was when we had gaps, having some level of thought out solution. Right. So I could say, Tim, here's what happened, but I'm not leaving it at that. Right. So I was able to show that I had some level of thought, even at that age, of, okay, here's what I would do. And it may not be the most well thought out thing. I mean, at that time, I'm mid-20s guy. Right. But at least I was able to demonstrate, right, that, hey, the people had challenges with this, next time this is what I would do, or this is what I recommend that we would do as an organization. Right. And that just followed me through that organization and just helped me be able to elevate. And then, like you say, you make a name for yourself. And oftentimes this is something that gets missed in banking even today, that people miss. And it's probably across industries, Tim. I'd like to get your quick thought on it. Is many companies will, kind of like your company did with you, right? They'll launch divisions, right? And they often go outside the company to bring in that talent, where that talent could be right there if people would demonstrate that. And so, I would share with the community here that's listening is, when you go to your training classes and you're doing things in your company, don't just think in terms of, can I get a raise, right? Or can I go to this next position? Hopefully this next position comes open and this person retires and I can get it. But think about how the company expands and how you could be on the forefront of launching a business within your company. Like you say, like as an entrepreneur, almost as an internal, almost, kind of along the lines of someone who would have an insurance company, right? Where you've got this, setup where they're kind of funding you, but you're operating the business. It's yours, right? It's yours to run, and you've got this support, right? Like a franchise. So to speak, in turn with, and so that happens all the time, all day, every day. But I think people miss that, right? And that's a great way to get your start, because I've seen it in the credit union industry, they call it a QSO, where you'll start a company, because the credit union can't do everything, they can't afford to, so they'll spin off a company that'll connect, something in the company that they're doing, and all of a sudden it becomes successful, and it spins off as its own company with that credit union as your first client. And then all of a sudden it gets sold, to these other credit unions. And all of a sudden now you've got this, tremendous business that got this nice launch with these existing relationships. And so I think a lot of people miss that, Tim. They always think starting their business means they got to leave the company, start with nothing. And, and that may be the case, but I think a lot of people miss opportunities because they could literally do this with their existing company. Is start a business with it. Don't be so afraid to share with them what your ambitions are to do that. Every company's different, but don't be afraid of that. But look at how you could start within your own company.
No, I mean that's brilliant. I mean, like what you are talking about is like becoming part of the solution, not the problem, right? So like what you're talking about, like when the banks are kind of merging and coming together, there's a guy like, oh, I know how those are going to go. So like,
right.
Of course he's going to go throw it on his rear end, right? But like you're the guy, let's go make this happen. I mean, who doesn't want a guy like that around, right? And who doesn't want to say, okay, I need a guy that I can trust to go run this new independent business unit that we're going to go spin out. You're the guy. I mean, like, I totally agree that is a brilliant piece of information. That's just shrewd business. And I think that's great advice for any listener of any show.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about this, Tim, in terms of particularly now when, and you know this, and companies, organizations, nonprofit, for profit, everybody's having to adapt, having to pivot, right? Having to make, critical decisions, oftentimes with very cloudy outlook or information to move forward that, especially with this environment. And so, MYB right now at your company, those conversations are being had, and the way that you can differentiate yourself is what Tim and I are talking about. Talk with, leadership, and when you're in training classes, they're telling you where their gaps are, right? So don't take training, for granted. When you're in these training classes, you're on these Zooms, ask the question, where are the gaps? Right. Where, it's kind of like in sports, right? We're talking a little football, on the football field, it's 11 on 11. You can't, the defense is always at a disadvantage because it can't cover everything. When I play football, I play basketball, any defense on any sport can't cover an entire field or court. There's something always being given up. Right. And so the offense is trying to exploit what you may be giving up. So it's the same in this organization. There's something. No organization is going to be completely rock solid and have everything buttoned up and covered. There's always a gap, right? And so what you want to do is help the company recognize and fill those gaps, and you may be the talent to do that. And so think about that tomorrow, or you get done listening to this podcast, jot down some ideas on, a business that you could start within your company. And don't get caught up in worry. I know how you guys are. Don't get caught up in worry about, well, they might steal my idea. Okay, listen. What's going to be for you is for you. Okay. Jot down your idea and start having those conversations internally. And I bet you somebody will, find some success in doing that. So it's a great thing, Tim.
Awesome.
Yep.
Stuff.
Helping people. Yeah. Yeah. You really helped us with that one. I love it. I love that. How can people get in touch with you and your company? If there's a nonprofit listening here, or, just people in general, just have additional questions or love to connect with you and your team, how can they do so?
Yeah. You can find all of our research and all of our content at nextafter.com. And I'm on all the social outlets. So LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. So you can hit me up there. Tim Kachuriak. There's not a whole lot of us Kachuriaks out there in the world.
Right.
So,
Right.
Type in Google, you'll pretty much run into me. So
yeah. There you go. Yeah, it's a good chance. Definitely. Kachuriak's not it's not Smith, right? So yeah, I'm sure if you were Tim Smith, there'd be a whole bunch of, might be a little harder to find. Definitely. So Tim Kachuriak is our guest today here on episode 217 of the Minding Your Business podcast. Make sure that you go and check him out, nextafter.com. That's in the show notes as well. And connect with his team, connect with him, and let him know that you heard him right here on the Minding Your Business podcast. Tim, any podcasting for you, hosting the show in the future? I think you make a great, tremendous podcaster.
Yeah, we actually have one. I hosted a couple of the early episodes, but a guy in our team runs it. It's called the Generosity Freak Show. And it's 360-degree conversation about giving and philanthropy. So it might be fun for some listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the name of it again? You said the Generosity Freak?
The Generosity Freak Show. Yep.
Gotcha. I like that. So we always like to support podcasts. So MYB, I encourage you, go and download and subscribe to that podcast, the Generosity Freak Show. Make sure you do that. I'm going to do that as well. And leave a 5-star positive comment as you listen. And, let's support, the podcast here. We always like to make sure we do that. So listen, Tim, I can't thank you enough, man. I appreciate your energy, appreciate your passion, appreciate your transparency and your leadership in sharing your story. I think it's helped me. I think it's helped, those listening. I think they walk away with something when they get done and go back to the real world outside of, again, watching election results and, being nervous about the holidays coming up and coronavirus and everything that's going on. They take something that's tangible that they can go and apply immediately, man. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Champ Ron. It's been a ton of fun. So let's go mind our own business, right?
Yep. There you go. Let's stay connected, my friend. Take care. Best wishes to you personally and professionally. And we'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Listen, that was Tim Kachuriak as our guest today. MYB. Listen, before we go, and I spoke a little bit on this earlier, but again, I want to not beat a dead horse, but there's three things that unite us, no matter where you're from, no matter what business you work in, no matter what your climb to success was or wasn't, no matter what obstacles that we all face. There's three things that unite us. We all want to be a little better for ourselves, a little better for our families, and a little better for our communities. And what better time to practice that than now? Okay, so as you meet people, if we all keep that in mind, we can all make this place a little better for all of us. So thank you so much for listening. Continue to support the Minding Your Business podcast. You can always find me at champronbrooks.com. Make sure you go there, champronbrooks.com. Email me, ron@themybpodcast.com. Love to hear from you, as I always do. And listen, this one's in the wraps. Thanks again to our guest, Tim Kachuriak. And go be great.